In 1812, France invades Russia with an army of nearly 500,000. Napoleon wins several small battles and at Borodino, but the Russians make sure there is nothing to capture. In fact, they even burn Moscow to the ground so that Napoleon can't capture it. And during his retreat from Russia, Napoleon loses some 450,000 men.
As Alexander sees what has happened to France, he acts to stop most liberal policy in order to preserve the monarchy. Russia is at the height of its power upon his death in 1825, but discontent is growing in the streets and the Romanovs' seat of power is starting to slip. Alexander's brother Nicholas I comes into Russia that is viewed as the most powerful nation in the world. However, Russia is a collection of many different people from many nations and discontent is rising. Nicholas instates Russification and tells the people to act more Russian. This involves adopting the Russian language, customs, and religion. At the same time, he tries to incorporate all Slavic people into Greater Russia. Nicholas would also begin substantial censoring of the press to remain more powerful. Around 1850, Nicholas would declare war on the declining Ottoman Empire to gain full access to the Black Sea. Britain and France would aid the Ottomans fearing Russia's indefinite expansion. Just 40 years since the defeat of Napoleon, the war would be a devastating defeat for Nicholas and Russia's reputation.
Russia loses the war because so many people are trapped in serfdom. That is impossible to challenge the industrializing nations of the West. Nicholas just can't keep up without a significant workforce.
Nicholas dies in 1855 and leaves Russia to his eldest son, Alexander II. The people of Russia are beginning to hold open resentment against the monarchy at this time, and Alexander tries to make the people happier by introducing liberal reforms and uncensoring the press. His most predominant is the Emancipation Edict of 1861, in which he states, "It is better to free them from the top than have them gain freedom from the bottom." This opens many workers to fill factories, but peasants often gain little from it as nobles control the majority of the land.
Alexander does many things like reducing conscription, reforming the courts to give trials by juries, and creating some local governments which he tightly controlled. However, he couldn't make anyone happy, including many of the radical groups.
Many radical groups like the People's Will and nihilists believe that only the Tsar's death and reorganization of the nation could change Russia for the better.
Reformation groups would begin using terrorism to reform the government at any cost. Alexander's entire reign has been consumed by the people revolting. In major cities, people begin talking of revolution in the streets, and many people begin riots because they lack the basic necessities of life. In his final days, Alexander was preparing to announce the organization of both a Duma and a constitution. However, on his way to propose this landmark reform in 1881, he was killed in the street by several suicidal revolutionaries, and both the Romanovs and the Russians' fates were sealed. Never again would there be such a chance to preserve the old Russian way of life. Alexander III, the previous Tsar's brother, was crowned in 1881. Sensing the real and present danger of the growing unrest, he begins severe repression, killing anyone opposing the government. He quickly moves to reverse many of the policies set forth by his brother. Alexander then intensifies Russification and supports pogroms to eliminate many of Russia's Jewish population. Unfortunately for Alexander, the repression would backfire, causing more open hatred, and in 1894, Alexander III's rule of Russia would come to an end.
By this time, Russia was in really bad shape. The economy was collapsing, and millions of Russians were openly speaking out against the government. Bread riots occurred daily just because people lack so many of their basic needs.
Nicholas II comes into the atmosphere in 1894 and realizes that if something is not done, the nation will slip involuntarily into revolution. A decade later, Nicholas has been repressing the people without mercy, and news comes of his devastating defeat in the war with Japan.
By 1905, the people are fed up and sign a petition. 100,000 marched to St. Petersburg to deliver it to the Tsar himself. Rumors remain that the Tsar was not even in the capital at that time, so he would do little to stop the day's course of events. No one knows who cast the first stone, but January 22, 1905 would be forever regarded as Bloody Sunday. Exchanges between the palace guards and the massive crowds caused riots to break out all over the city, and estimates put that over 1,000 were killed. As news spread to the Tsar, people all over Western Russia had already started open revolt. It would take months to suppress the people, and nearly 100,000 were killed. The revolution of 1905 would expose to the world the real state of the last absolute monarchy. Begrudgingly, Nicholas had to accept and honor a manifesto given in October of that month. Under it, the Russian Empire would be adapted into a parliamentary, constituted monarchy. The Duma, created under this, was simple appeasement. It would later be corrupted in his favor by 1907. The 1906 Constitution of Russia was meant as nothing more than a lie, as it simply reinforced the Tsar's supremacy over sovereign Russia, its Duma, and its law.
The revolution of 1905 fails for three reasons. First, the army remained loyal to the Tsar. Second, the French government gave the Tsar vast sums of money to finance their actions. Lastly, the people of Russia were not organized enough to overthrow the government.
Nicholas now understood the threat of his inaction and would try to stabilize the nation until June 1914. With the assassination of Franz Ferdinand in Serbia, Europe was plunged into World War I. Within 2 years, the Russians had nearly 10 million casualties, more than the entire Central Alliance during the war. By 1917, the Tsar has spent significant time at the front, and many groups such as the Petrograd Soviets and the Social Democratic Labor Party have rallied sufficient support to overthrow the government. In February of the same year, the revolutionaries claimed the control of the government and provided a provisional government until the Tsar was put out of power. The Tsar was delivered an ultimatum. He could either surrender the throne, or he and his family would surely die.
The Russia my father gave me never lost a war. What shall I say to my son when the time comes? That I had no pride? That I was weak? I've always thought God meant me to rule. He put me here, He chose me, and whatever happens is His will. We shall fight on until victory.
Nicholas II abdicates on March 15, 1917, and with that ends the longest monarch dynasty in human history. The royal family was moved with a small group of servants and close members to several locations across Russia. The rest of the Romanov family was virtually eliminated after Nicholas's abdication. Finally, in the Ipatiev house in Yekaterinburg, the family meets its fate.
They spend 2 months in the home, and legend goes on they were called again to move, but first they would take a family photo. Crowded in the basement, they soon realized that no photographer was coming.
The Bolshevik commander reads them their sentence, and as if they had committed a crime, and with a complement of guards present, they opened fire, killing the Tsar and his family and the group of servants.
And with these events, the last great monarchy comes to a close, and with it, the end of Romanov's rule.
And thus ends tyrannic rule in Russia.
But all is good. We go on 70-year vacation and return in 1991. See you later, everyone!